with AI, will we have less outsourcing because your outsourced team might be robotic and you might have an in-sourced manager of the outsourced robotic team? The advantage of outsourcing is generally going to be, especially if you've got customer work or specific projects, it's really good at getting those done in a discrete fashion, doesn't distract your core team. In the testing space, there's definitely been a little bit of a micro trend recently of insourcing, of customers bringing some of their testing functions back from outsourced companies and looking to use AI to close the gap. You need to keep control of the intellectual property and the tacit knowledge that makes that product supportable, maintainable, and implementable.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Devico Breakfast Bar. Here we speak with different people involved in the business landscape, share their expertise, delve into the latest tech trends, and explore the ins and outs of IT outsourcing. I'm Oleg Sadikov, and today I'm excited to have Adam Sandman, founder and the CEO of Inflectra Corporation. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new episodes. Hi Adam, and thanks for joining me today.
Hi Oleg, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here today. Excited to be on the show and talk all things tech.
Let's start our podcast with a little blitz. I start a sentence and you continue. Entrepreneurship gave me
freedom to do what's right for customers, build things that are interesting and exciting, and not feel like you're constrained by conventions, and you can make interesting and cool new ideas and move the industry forward.
Entrepreneurship deprived me
sleep and probably stability, and probably changing jobs every 3 or 4 years.
My main superpower is
being able to communicate both business and technical ideas to an audience, and being able to take those ideas, come up with interesting, fast, cool solutions that helps business people successful.
My weakness is
patience. I tend to be impatient, and I think fast, talk fast, as you may gather, and sometimes I think I can rub people the wrong way because of that.
When I'm afraid, I
get anxious and start to speak quickly.
You started programming at the age of 10. What was your first program, and what inspired you to dive into computer programming at such young age?
Yeah, the first thing I wrote at the age of 10 was on a BBC Acorn Micro 8-bit computer back in the early 80s, 82, when they first came out. And those days you had to write software because it didn't come with many things. The first software I think I wrote was some video games, around taking some video games that I'd seen and sort of copying them and seeing if I could make them. The first thing I wrote that I think was useful, that I really enjoyed making, was actually some software to do drawing and flowchart and drawing graphics. So I wanted to create the game of Risk. I needed a map. Well, I had no software to draw a map, so I ended up making drawing software. And the game of Risk ended up not being very good. But the map, the graphing software to draw the map was really good. So I learned then that sometimes what you think you're going to do, you end up pivoting to something else. I wrote that in Visual Basic. I wrote it in BBC 8-bit Basic and ported it to C, and it ran on 8-bit computers with 32K of memory. My goodness.
It was different time.
It was different times. Screen memory, 10K. Oh my goodness, what will I do?
What motivated you to start Inflectra? Was there a specific problem or gap in the market?
Yeah, there was. There was a gap in the market, and also very specifically a gap in the company I was working for. So I was working for an IT consulting firm, and we were good at software development, but frankly speaking, we sucked at software testing. And part of the reason we sucked at it is we had no tools for it. We gave people spreadsheets and whiteboards and said, to do testing, put the results in a spreadsheet on the whiteboard, and then log some bugs, and away we go. We realized that there were tools on the market, but when we went to our customer and said there were these great tools, they were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the client said, no, we're not going to pay for that. I'm like, I could write this software. It's not that good. I mean, it shouldn't be that expensive, and it should be easier to buy. And so that was the inspiration for starting the company, to help both the company I work for, but companies like that, be successful at a lower price point.
How have you personally evolved as a leader and a technologist since founding Inflectra?
I mean, inevitably you evolve, and I have evolved. When I started the company, it was me and 3 other people. Now we're about 40 people. So you have to evolve as a leader, because you go from basically directing people and doing things to managing people who manage people. And there's nothing quite as tricky in some ways as managing managers, because the way I think of it is, when you're a small company of 3 or 4 people as a startup, you're like driving a speedboat, right? You're a speedboat, you're the captain, you're turning the wheel, and the rudder moves, and the boat moves. Now we're still a small company. We're not Amazon, but even at the size we are, if we have a new idea, a new decision, when you turn the wheel as the captain of a ship of 40 people, it has to go through all the engine room and the signals and the controls. And by the time it gets to the sales team and the workers or the marketing people, it may be several weeks since you turned the wheel. So it's more like an oil tanker. You're driving an oil tanker. When you turn that wheel, it may take some time for the inertia for the ship to move. And as a leader, you have to understand that difference. So I would say that's been the biggest difference, is that before, if I had a new idea, like, oh, we have this new idea, new feature, I'll code it, give it to the client, we win the deal. Now it's like, well, we have a backlog of 100 items for 100 customers. We can't be as responsive to an individual customer as we used to be, because we don't want to break the tool for other customers. We also have to think of everyone's needs. So things like that mean we can't be quite as nimble, but we still want to be responsive. And as a leader, adjusting from the kind of a startup mode to more of a sustainment mode is a big difference, and some people don't like it. Many leaders, I think, struggle with that transition. I actually enjoy managing a larger company, and I enjoyed starting the company. But I think that's because I also worked at a larger company first, which was a public company. And so I think had I just gone straight from college into starting a company like some people do, I think I would have struggled more with the company getting bigger and management style changing. So I think as a leader, I've had to get more used to the idea that it's indirect leadership as opposed to direct leadership. Direct leadership, tell you what to do it. Indirect leadership, coaching the managers to teach the people to then do the work. It's a much more indirect style of leadership.
Are there key lessons that you have learned that you wish you knew when you started your entrepreneurial journey?
Many things. One of the things I think is the value of time. I think when I started the company, I was more concerned about money than time. So meaning that I would do things that save money, even though it took more time, like building a website, building an e-commerce platform that we could have probably bought. So maybe we built too many things. Also, we didn't hire people as quickly as some of our competitors that were funded with venture capital. So I think as a small company, I wish we had maybe been a little bit less conservative, and I wish I'd spent more money and spent less time on certain things. And so there's always that balance. Do I buy something? Do I build it? Do I hire someone, or do I just save the money and wait till we can really afford them? And I think there's a risk you have to decide. So I think the lesson I would say to myself, if I went back in time, were a bit more aggressive on the spending money on certain tools and potentially hire a bit faster than we did in the early days. Now we're doing it differently, but that the early days, I think we waited too long to hire some people.
What are the most common challenges organizations face in test management and how they overcome them?
I mean, the biggest challenge in some ways is getting started. Many people in test management don't use test management. They use spreadsheets, or they use something like a bug tracker like Jira, and they kind of build a very ad hoc process that works for them. And then they get stuck in that process. So then when they look at a tool like us or any of our competitors, they feel like it's going to constrain them because, well, we do testing in these 10 different ways. Your tool works in these 5 different ways. How are we going to make it work? So the big danger, I think, for people is getting too wedded to an ad hoc process that's then hard to make standard. Another thing I think people often do is they make the process too complicated. So the opposite problem is they never had a tool. Now they have a tool. Let's create a workflow with 1,000 steps. It's like, no. Your people won't adopt it. So if your people are used to spreadsheets and you build this really complicated test management workflow that's maybe what you need in 5 years, it's going to put people off. They won't adopt the tool. And what will happen is they'll stick with their spreadsheets. So that's always, I think, one of the biggest challenges, adoption and change management. With test management is no different. I think that's one of the biggest challenges specifically, though, is that testers are busy. They've got to get testing done. To adopt a new tool just takes time. And then you want to put automated testing results in. You want to integrate everything. The other thing I've seen is people try and integrate everything at the beginning. Like, well, I want to integrate my performance testing tool, my security testing, my functional, my unit testing, and it's all doable. But they want to do it in the first week. I'm like, you don't even know what you're doing yet. Let's start slowly, get value. Another thing I think I've seen is that people create new work rather than replacing work. That's an interesting one, which I think. So we have this client. I won't mention the name. They're doing all their testing in Excel, and it takes a long time. And they got the new one of our tool, and instead of taking all those spreadsheets and loading them into the tool and using the tool and thus saving time, they were like, well, that's going to take some time to set that up. Why don't we have our customers start writing requirements, which we know they should be doing? They're not really doing it now. So now the users were like, I've got to do all my testing in Excel, which takes 6 hours. Now I've got to do all these requirements in this new tool, which takes another 3 hours. This tool isn't saving me time. It's costing me time. Make sure that when your users have to see value, not just the managers. So make sure that if they're getting a tool, not just the managers see value and save time, the users have to see it as a productivity benefit, or they won't use it. They'll just start going back to their old ways of working.
How do you see AI and machine learning changing the landscape of test automation in the coming years?
The short answer is come to my talk in Star West in California. I'm going to talk on it. But the reality is it's going to change everything. I truly do believe that. What I'm seeing right now, even with the current state of technology, which is GPT-4 mini, which is still only the interim state of where we're going to be. Right now, GPT is pretty good at understanding human language test cases. So open up the web browser, log into the system, create an order, enter data into these fields, click a button. Things that we're doing manually using automated scripts like Selenium right now, or Playwright or Cypress. So AI can do some of that already. Now, is it perfect? perfect? No. Is it flaky? Sometimes, yes. Can it look at a screen visually and reliably find things? No. Yes, it can sometimes, not always. GPT-4v is an improvement. But 3 years from now, 2 years from now, we're going to be at the point where the AI can definitely see most things on a page graphically. It won't require locators. It won't require all this technology that I think test automation people are using today to do testing. It's just going to be obsolete. The idea of having a human write scripts manually to test something is going to be seen as archaic as making a shirt by hand with a sewing needle, not using a sewing machine. I think that's where we're headed. Now, it's still going to have humans. We're still going to need people to review everything, give feedback. You're training it to be your assistant, but it's not going to replace the work you do, but you won't be doing the same work. So how we do testing today will be very different to how we do testing tomorrow. The role of a test automation engineer and a tester, a test analyst is going to be different, but it's still critical, maybe more critical. AI is churning out more and more crappy code within Copilot and tools. We're building apps faster. So as we speed up development, testing's always going to be the problem. Validation, you've got to make sure that it's tested. AI is going to make it more testing needed. So I think we're going to see more testing needed. We'll have tools to make it testing easier and faster. So it will be different, but there will still be a massive need for testing.
IT outsourcing is a major trend in tech industry. What are your thoughts on advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing tech functions?
Well, this is interesting, right? I mean, so there's the advantage and disadvantage of outsourcing. There's also the theory that with AI, will we have less outsourcing because your outsourced team might be robotic and you might have an in-sourced manager of the outsourced robotic team, but that's a side topic. We at the company where I work, we mostly do in-source development, but we have outsourced certain projects. So the advantage of outsourcing is generally going to be, especially if you've got customer work or specific projects, it's really good at getting those done in a discrete fashion, doesn't distract your core team. You can scale up, scale down very quickly. So for example, customer comes to us and says, I need to do these specific things using your tool. Outsource is great for that. When it's core product development, we're always a bit more careful. We do some outsourcing for that, but I think the knowledge transfer is important because if you have to support a product for 10 years, you need to know how that product works. If you outsource everything, and again, outsourcing staff augmentation versus projects, there's a different way of doing it. So you might want to do outsourcing smartly and have staff augmentation with long-term employees effectively that are working for you that you know over multiple years. Then it's like an employee. So really it's around the knowledge retention. If you work with an outsourcing company where they give you a team that's stable and that's going to be knowledge retention, then it can be pretty good for any kind of project. If it's going to be a team where it's spun down or the team can churn every 6 months, which may be great for short-term projects or client projects or things where 3 years from now, no one needs to worry about exactly how it was done because it's delivered. So I think you have to always be careful around the knowledge and the IP and actually just the tacit knowledge. I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of a developer's tacit knowledge. Like you can document everything. You can have coding standards. You can do an exit interview. Nothing replaces, at least right now, maybe AI is different, but right now you can't replace the knowledge in a programmer's head as easy as you think you can. And the performance benefits of having someone who knows the code, work on the code is incredible. AI may change that. But at least for now, I think when you're looking at outsourcing, you need to do it smartly and make sure you understand where is the knowledge going to reside at the end of the piece of work? Where does that need to reside?
How can a company assess whether outsourcing is the right move for their IT needs?
I mean, again, outsourcing development is one thing. Outsourcing can be other things, right? For example, if you're doing cloud hosting and AWS, if you, for example, are hosting on AWS, you don't know much about it, you don't need to, it's not a competitive advantage for you, it's just where you host things. You might get an outsourced AWS expert. Your team can work with them. So your DBAs. So specialist functions, I think, are easy to outsource, make sense. If it's part of your core business, then it's really a question. Is this something that's a competitive advantage for us? Is it our core business? Is it ancillary? Like SOC 2 or any of those kind of security certs. Do you need to be an expert in SOC 2? Probably not. You just need to be certified. Well, that's a great option for an outsourced IT resource. Testing, same thing if you're doing outsourced testing. Am I a testing company? Am I a testing services company? No, I'm a bank. I want my banking to work. The apps are going to be changing. We've got a mobile banking app this month. Next month's an ERP app. Next month, something like Guidewire or some other or a CRM tool. Those are different testing needs. If I've got a testing team insourced, they probably aren't experts at those 3 different tech. If I have an outsourced team, I could have the outsourcing company rotate the team. So there's pros and cons, flexibility, retention, many aspects. But I think you have to look at it as, is it core business? Is it a long-term need? Or is it something where really it's ephemeral or it's going to change over time? Outsourcing gives you a lot of flexibility, both from a cost, but also just knowledge. You get access to a wider set of teams than you've had otherwise access to.
What steps can leaders take to ensure a smooth transition when moving into an outsourced IT model?
I mean, the big difference, I think, is that you have much more contractual SLA. So I think it's a bit more of a, again, when we've done this, you have to think about what is the SLA you require. When you have employees working for you, you can change the SLA very dynamically. It's like, oh, I need someone to be able to respond to an IT ticket or help a customer or a user out within a certain amount of time. And then maybe you change your mind or you get feedback and you have to adjust it. You can probably just tell them, okay, you need to respond more quickly. Let's reassign other work from your duties. When you're dealing with outsourced model, the company that you're working with has probably staffed this project for your stated need. If your needs change, you'll have to go through a contract review. So I think one thing is you need to be quite specific about what your needs are. Make sure you really understand your needs and find a company that's going to work with you to help you undiscover the needs you don't even know you need. So a really good outsourcing partner, I think, not only is going to tell you, give you a price for what you said you need, but they're going to ask good questions to uncover the latent needs that you don't know you have, but you'll need, so that when that happens, that you're not surprised. I think choosing a good partner is important. Doing a good discovery is important. Having a good skill sets. Do a trial project with them. Another thing you could try is, we've done this, have a trial project for 6 months or one piece of work. Assess them. Did you like the work they did? Was it high quality? Was the communication good? Was it documented well? All the things that you would care about. Make sure you get that up front, because it'll be harder to change potentially if you sign a year outsourcing agreement.
How do you see the role of IT outsourcing evolving in the context of your industry?
So in our industry, it tends to be outsourced development and outsourced testing. I mean, I don't do much in the work of outsourced IT. We do obviously do it ourselves, but that's not an area where our clients work with us. We're more development than testing. So I'll talk to that. In the testing space, there's definitely been a little bit of a micro trend recently of insourcing, of customers bringing some of their testing functions back from outsourced companies and looking to use AI to close the gap. Now, I don't know if that's a big trend. So one trend could be, instead of hiring 30 people in a lower cost geography to do testing, maybe you'll hire 5 more skilled people at a higher price point, which could be in a variety of geographies, and they'll have an AI with them, which makes them 3 times more productive. So that may change it. So I think there'll be a trend towards more skilled outsourced teams, and I think smaller outsourced teams. I feel like those are the trends. Whether those are going to be fully insourced or just outsourced to a higher quality company, I think any outsourcing company is going to have to be using AI to be competitive. That's for sure. And I think they're going to have to raise their skill level. The opportunity is for those that succeed, they can charge a higher price point. I think for those that fail, they'll be out of the business. So I think in the development test space, I feel like those are 2 trends that we're going to see. Now, call centers, there's something similar going on there. AI, people are worried in some of the call center industries, can the first tier of support be AI completely? I don't think in development and testing, we're going to see the same trend. I don't think it's going to be testing's done yet autonomously by AI. I think it's going to be AI semi-autonomously with a human coach. Now, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, that might be changed. But I mean, certainly in the medium term, I'm seeing it's going to be a human computer team. But again, you look at other industries, IT support, like help desk support, I think that could be, for first tier, probably be AI completely.
Why don't you believe in autonomous testing these days?
I believe it is the future. I just don't believe it's fully there yet. I believe it's going to be human-guided autonomous testing. So it's semi-autonomous. We've done experiments. We both with our product and some of our competitors. Many competitors have tools, including ours, that will to some degree do it. What we're finding is it's still got enough flakiness and enough unreliability that it needs human intervention to learn and to be trained from. I mean, a true autonomous test would be you give a user story and a website and say, test this. Well, what does testing mean? It's contextual. Accessibility. Is it usable? The computers are going to get better at all of these things, but it's going to need a human, I think, to give the AI feedback about what is this. I could make this application work following the buttons that are there, but it's horrible experience. Took too long. The AI might come back and say, look, I ran this test, I clicked on all the buttons, it all worked, but it took 30 seconds. Is that an acceptable pass? And you might say, this is a sign-up form. It shouldn't be 30 seconds, it should be 5 seconds. What's going on? And so the AI is giving you really valuable feedback. Is that autonomous? Is that semi-autonomous? That's what I'm saying. I think the role of a human is not going to be testing. It's not going to be writing scripts. It's going to be analyzing what the AI is telling you. So if that's autonomous testing, then I think we are there. If it's truly a machine going off and coming back and saying go live without any human intervention, I probably don't think that's the case. At least not in the next 3 years, maybe 5 years, I don't know.
Autonomous testing is the testing when you provide a URL and then you get bugs report at the end. Basically, this is autonomous testing.
I think we're close to that, yeah. Whether that bug report then is sufficient to fix everything without analysis, human analysis, and again, a good AI would be a conversation too. So that's why I say I think we're at the I call that semi-autonomous in my mind. I mean, maybe it's more autonomous than we have today, which is humans writing scripts. I think that is dead. That is like the dying industry. Humans writing Selenium, dead. Humans writing Cypress, dead. Humans writing Playwright. I mean, this is just crazy. So if you think about this for a second, right? When a human does manual testing, I'm a human using an app that I'm going to be using as a human. When I'm an automation engineer, we're asking them to write code, get XPath, do browser tools. It's like, I'm a machine now. Why am I making a human a machine? That's the ironic thing. We've turned humans into machines to try and do automated testing. Well, machines are much better at that kind of stuff. So I think that the role of a human tester is going to be much more a test analyst traditionally. The machine will do the testing, give you the report. You go, well, let me look at this. Is very interesting. That screen flow is super interesting. Like the machine went through a different flow than I expected. Why did it do that? Why did it go through this weird user experience flow? Oh, because the navigation is confusing. So it didn't go the primary memory nav. It went down 6 buttons deeper because the nav is confusing. So the human would say that is still a path, I suppose, but the machine has given me really insightful feedback, which I'm going to pass to our UX team to say, make this more usable. Run the same thing again. It goes from 30 seconds to 5 seconds, and the screen flow will show how the machine follows a different path. So I think that's the cool, interesting stuff we're going to see in testing, at least in my opinion.
Are there specific regions or countries that you find particularly promising for tech talent?
Anywhere in the world. I mean, we have customers and partners in Eastern Europe, India, the classic places, Philippines. These are all places we already do business, Vietnam. So I won't pick those because I think everyone's doing work there already. Interesting talent, I think Morocco. I was at GITEX in Africa in the early part of the year. Incredible talent in Morocco, French speaking, which is not common. Most outsourced companies are dealing with English-speaking outsourced, which is great. Unless you're trying to sell to a French multinational, not so good then. So I think Morocco is good. They have English skills and French skills. Tech talent is good. There's not as many companies in Morocco. It's not yet like some other countries. Nigeria, Kenya. Nigeria's got issues with currency. Hard to do business there with clients. Great to do business there as an employer because you can obviously keep costs low and still pay people very much a living wage. So I think Sub-Saharan Africa, certain countries, Nigeria, Kenya, Mozambique's good. Portuguese speaking and English speaking. South Africa's a bit ropey right now with the power situation there, but there's good talent there. Those are some areas we've definitely found. The UAE, we have clients in Saudi, probably too expensive, but neighboring countries could potentially be interesting. We even have some people come from Djibouti to our booth in GITEX. So Africa is definitely the untapped talent. Infrastructure has always been the problem there, both IT, power, all of that stuff. Currency can be a problem, but there's definitely certain countries I would pick and choose. Morocco is good. Egypt, possibly. Certainly the sub-Saharan ones I mentioned, Mauritius, Madagascar, actually, maybe even. Places where there's good connectivity, good use of reasonably good infrastructure. If you want US, Puerto Rico, tax-free, and technically US. So if you've got higher security type projects, Puerto Rico is a good option. We've got some partners that are basing their entire companies there now for tax and labor first reasons. We do a lot of South America. Everyone's in South America. I mean, Buenos Aires obviously is good. High skill. Good if you're dealing with Spanish countries, but the language is usually good there too. Chile and various Central American countries like Costa Rica are very strong. Probably too expensive now. The market has kind of moved a bit there. But so those are some of the areas where I think we've seen some opportunities. We have customers in all those countries. So it's interesting that technology is everywhere. We just don't always realize it.
As we wrap up our conversation, what advice would you give companies considering IT outsourcing but concerning about losing control over their technology products?
It's a great question. It's what I raised earlier. I think the biggest thing is make sure you understand what knowledge do you need to have to support your product in the long term. I mean, you want to keep control of your product. You need to keep control of the intellectual property and the tacit knowledge that makes that product supportable, maintainable, and implementable. You need to know enough about your product that when customers come to you, you can be a good ambassador to them. So with those constructs and those constraints, understanding what kinds of outsourcing would make sense, and there's probably you to be thinking of it in different silos. Like there could be team augmentation where you get a high quality team that's almost like your employees, they're retained over a longer period. There's strong knowledge retention and obviously the strong knowledge transfer off that team as well. Then there could be project-based work where you're looking at more one-off engagements, client-specific, custom work, temporary add-ons, plugins, things where you know the level of long-term knowledge is not as important and you can be a bit more aggressive, or it's in a different tech stack. For example, we use C# as our primary development. We're a Microsoft company. We have lots of plugins written in other languages because of the nature of the plugin. Those are great opportunities where you have, I would say, things outside of your core tech stack that you have to be able to develop. Great opportunities there. Mobile, maybe you've got to write a mobile app. You don't have iOS or Android experience on team. Great opportunity there. So I think it's like understand your core business, what can be outsourced, what needs to be kept in house, what are the ancillary projects that you can definitely outsource, and then even within the core business, what bits could you outsource and would you outsource to a team, to a person? Really, I think you have to just think of those different things intelligently and then make a plan and then look at the pros and cons and also look in the contracts and make sure when you choose an outsourcing partner that the contract is going to have the protections that you need for the IP and that the team members will guarantee you the same team member or whatever it is that you need to retain that knowledge. Just make sure that the contract supports that. I would probably say don't just rely on the words of the vendor. Make sure it's in writing as much as possible. I don't no disservice to anyone, but business is business. People change. It's always good to have things in writing.
Definitely. If you enjoy our discussion and want to stay updated on future episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you will not miss out on the latest insights and conversations from the Devico Breakfast Bar.